You make a sharp left turn out of the grocery store parking lot in the summer of 2026, and you hear it. That sound. That sickening, gut-punching sloshing sound, like somebody hit a half-full bucket of water behind your radio. Slosh, 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 every single time you turn the steering wheel. Then you start smelling it. That swamp smell. That wet basement, rotting carpet, dead frog in a pond stink crawling out of your AC vents and punching you in the face. Then you look down. Your passenger floorboard, the carpet, the nice carpet your kid puts their feet on, is soaked, dripping. A puddle of cold, mysterious, foul-smelling water sitting right on top of the wiring harness for your airbag computer, and you panic. Of course you panic. Because in 2026, with the price of eggs, the price of gas, the price of insurance, you cannot afford a single thing to go wrong with this car. So you drive it, sloshing and stinking, straight to the Stealership. They put it on the lift, they plug in their fancy computer for 45 minutes of fake diagnostic theater, and the service writer walks out wearing that smug little smile I have seen 1,000 times. He says the words designed to break you. He says, "Sir, your AC evaporator core has failed internally. To replace it, we have to remove the entire dashboard of the vehicle." The quote is $1,200, and 90% of that is interior labor. We can start Monday. $1,200 to rip apart a car that is mechanically perfect. To unbolt your steering column, disconnect your airbags, pull your radio, peel back your headliner, and gut the interior like a fish, all over a problem that does not exist. Because here is the truth that the dealership repair lobby has spent 2 decades burying under a mountain of billable labor hours. Your evaporator core is fine. It is perfect. It is doing exactly what Japanese engineers in 1970-something designed it to do. The fix for your sloshing aquarium dashboard is a 5-second job, under the car, with a tool that costs $0 and is probably hanging in your closet right now. A wire coat hanger. That is it. That is the entire repair. And today, I am going to walk you through the exact science, the exact physics, the exact step-by-step process so you never, ever pay the $1,200 dashboard extortion tax again. The corporate dealerships making billions of dollars off your swamp smell panic want you to believe that anything behind that plastic dashboard is voodoo magic. They want you to think it is a sealed black box of NASA technology that only their certified 25-year-old technician with a tablet can touch. It is not. It is basic gravity and basic plumbing. The same physics that drains your kitchen sink drains your air conditioner. As always, what I am sharing with you today is for educational purposes, observational science based on the work of master Japanese engineers who built this stuff to be serviced by a human being, not by a robot with a billing department. Let me explain the engineering. Let me explain why your evaporator core is perfectly fine and what is actually happening inside that dashboard, because once you understand the physics, you will never be scared of the sloshing sound again. Your AC evaporator core is essentially a tiny radiator hidden inside a sealed plastic housing called the HVAC box, mounted up under the dash. Refrigerant runs through it, gets extremely cold, and warm cabin air gets blown across those cold fins by the blower motor. Now here is the part the Stealership prays you do not understand: condensation physics. When you blow warm, humid air across a cold surface, water vapor in that air immediately condenses into liquid water. This is the same reason a glass of iced tea sweats on a hot day in July. It is the same reason your bathroom mirror fogs up after a shower. It is the same reason there is dew on the grass at 5 in the morning. Your evaporator core is, by design, manufacturing water. It is supposed to. Engineers calculated this. A modern automotive AC system on a humid August day in Houston or Miami can pull anywhere from 1 to 3 liters of water out of the cabin air per hour of operation. That is gallons of water per week. The system is engineered around the assumption that all of that water has to go somewhere, and that somewhere is straight down, through gravity, and out of the car onto the pavement. That is why, when you park at a restaurant in summer, you see that little puddle of water under the front of every car in the lot. That is not a coolant leak. That is not engine oil. That is the AC drain tube working perfectly. That is the single most important part of this entire system, and it costs the manufacturer about 11 cents to produce. It is a small rubber or plastic tube, about the diameter of a pencil, that runs from the bottom of the HVAC box, through a grommet in the firewall, and dangles down somewhere near your transmission or the floor pan. That is it. That is the whole secret. The Japanese, the masters of this stuff, the Toyota, Honda, Mazda, Subaru engineers, they made sure this tube was accessible, simple, and serviceable because they knew exactly what was going to happen to it. If you have ever heard the sloshing sound, if your passenger carpet has ever been mysteriously soaked after running the AC on a long road trip, smash that like button right now and break the algorithm for me. The corporate auto repair lobby spends millions trying to bury this exact video, and your engagement is what keeps the lights on. And tell me in the comments, honestly, what was the worst diagnostic quote you have ever been given for what turned out to be a $5 problem? I read every single one of them. Now here is the villain of the story. Here is exactly how the Stealership turns your 11-cent rubber tube into a $1,200 interior demolition project. They use sensory panic. They have trained an entire generation of service writers to weaponize your fear of the sloshing sound and the swamp smell. They know that when a customer walks in describing water in the floorboard, that customer is already terrified. They are picturing electrical fires, mold spreading through the entire car, the airbag computer shorting out at 60 miles per hour. The service writer is taught to nod gravely, to use the most expensive possible terminology, to say the words evaporator core failure because those 4 words have a labor flat rate of 8 to 12 hours depending on the make and model. On a modern crossover with a deeply integrated dash, the factory labor time to remove and replace an evaporator core can hit 14 hours. At a labor rate of $190 an hour, which is what dealerships in major metro areas are charging in 2026, that is $2,660 in labor alone, before parts. The $1,200 quote is the friendly version. The big city quote is north of $3,000, and the entire diagnosis is a lie. A real evaporator core failure is almost always a refrigerant leak, which means your AC stops blowing cold, not that water starts pouring into your floorboard. Water in the floorboard is, 99% of the time, one thing and one thing only. It is a clogged drain tube. But clogged drain tube pays the dealership about $15 of labor. Evaporator core replacement pays the dealership a mortgage payment. You tell me which diagnosis they are going to write on the work order. This is the dashboard extortion model. It is not a glitch in the system. It is the system. Modern Western service writing is a sales floor with hydraulic lifts, and the swamp smell is the closing pitch. Let me explain the actual science of what happened to your tube, because this is the part that is almost insulting in its simplicity. Your AC drain tube has an inner diameter of roughly 6 to 8 millimeters. That is smaller than a drinking straw. The opening at the bottom, where it dangles under the car, is constantly exposed to road grit, dust kicked up from the highway, pollen in the spring, leaf debris in the fall, and occasionally a curious spider looking for a warm place to build a web. All it takes is one single speck of compacted dust, roughly half a millimeter across, lodged in the opening of that tube. Because of the principle of surface tension, water molecules cling to each other and to the inner walls of the tube. That tiny speck of dust acts as a seed, and the water immediately begins backing up behind it, forming a stable plug. Within 24 to 48 hours, that plug becomes a wall, and the HVAC box upstream of it starts filling like a bathtub with the drain stopper in. This is what I call the evaporator aquarium effect. Your dashboard is now holding anywhere from 1 to 2 full liters of warm, dark, oxygen-poor water. And what grows in warm, dark, oxygen-poor water? Mold, bacteria. Specifically, biofilm colonies and a fungus called cladosporium. That is the swamp smell. You are not smelling mechanical failure. You are smelling a science experiment. You are smelling a small swamp ecosystem that you have unintentionally cultivated inside your air vents over the course of about a week. Then you turn the wheel hard, the aquarium tilts, and the water finds the only way out, which is the path of least resistance, which is the seam between the HVAC box and the firewall, which dumps it directly onto the passenger floor. None of this is a failure. All of it is gravity doing exactly what gravity was always going to do once you put a speck of dust in the wrong place. Now, here is the cheat code. Here is the $0 fix that every master Japanese mechanic has known about since the Carter administration. You grab a wire coat hanger, the kind your dry cleaner gives you for free. You take a pair of pliers, and you unwind the twisted part at the top, and you straighten it out into one long piece of stiff wire, leaving the hook at the end. Park the car on a flat surface, set the parking brake, and let it sit for 10 minutes so the engine and exhaust cool down. Get on your back, slide under the front of the car on the passenger side, and look up. You are searching for a small black rubber or plastic tube, roughly pencil thickness, sticking out through a hole in the firewall or the floor pan, somewhere in the vicinity of the transmission tunnel. It is almost always damp. It is almost always dirty. On most Toyotas and Hondas, it dangles about 3 to 4 inches below the floor pan. On some Subarus, it tucks up under a heat shield. Once you find it, take the straight end of the coat hanger and gently feed it up into the tube, maybe 2 to 3 inches. Do not jam it. Do not punch a hole through the side, just a gentle wiggle. You will feel the resistance of the clog, and then suddenly you will feel it give. And then comes the magic. That 2 liters of stinking biofilm-loaded water that was sitting in your dashboard will instantly pour out of that tube all over your shoulder, all over the pavement, in one glorious, disgusting, victorious gush. Slide out from under the car. Start the engine. Turn on the AC. Listen, the sloshing is gone. The smell, after the system dries out over the next day or two, is gone. Total cost, $0. Total time, less than 5 minutes. Total amount of dashboard you had to remove, 0 pieces. You just defeated a $1,200 quote with a piece of bent wire, and you did it using nothing but the same physics that every Japanese engineer assumed you would figure out on your own. I want you to subscribe to this channel and hit the notification bell right now before the Dashboard Repair Lobby and the Dealership Service Writer Association figure out how to deplatform this kind of information for good. Every single video on this channel is another corporate lie burned to the ground, another $500 repair turned back into a 5-minute fix, another piece of suppressed master mechanic knowledge ripped out of the vault and handed back to the people it was always meant for. Share this with anyone you love who owns a car. Because in 2026, with the cost of everything going vertical, nobody can afford to lose $1,200 to a speck of dust and a service writer with a quota. Stay sharp, stay skeptical, and never, ever let anybody charge you to remove a dashboard over a clogged garden hose. I will see you in the next